people with medical debt and people who are really struggling economically, there's this, polls show that one of Biden's vulnerabilities, his main vulnerability is the perception that he's just too old to run. But a secondary vulnerability that's very significant is the fact that people do not perceive the economy as healthy, as producing benefits for their lives, which ultimately is all that matters. And you have this new cottage industry of very wealthy people like Chris Hayes with his Comcast contract that's worth many millions of dollars a year, and writers at The Atlantic, who now are kind of, you can see how these scripts form. Nick, I know for a fact they all talk to each other all day. They're on the same list. There used to be that journalist list that was run by Ezra Klein, that when it was exposed kind of became a scandal because journalists aren't supposed to be spending all day colluding with one another and collaborating with one another and speaking to and for each other, but that's exactly what they were doing. And obviously, if you're on a list, it creates this kind of pressure to conform to the orthodoxies of the liberal establishment, which is the worst possible thing you can have for journalists. But they still have these lists. They still have these group chats that they're all in. And you see these scripts emerge. And the new script is Americans are dumb for thinking the economy is bad because, in fact, the economy is good. And it's being done and said by people for whom the economy is very good, like Chris Hayes, who doesn't have any medical debt or any kind of debt, but in fact, many millions of dollars a year in a contract to host an MSNBC show for 1 hour a night. You've been talking about that and about this thing you're calling Bidenomics. What do you mean by all of that?
So the campaign strategy of Joe Biden in order to win over Americans on the economy is to have millionaires like Joe Scarborough tell Americans to quit whining and everything's okay. I think there's an estimate that he makes around $50,000 per episode, and that's before bonuses. You get bonuses for ratings. So you get $50,000 per day.
And his wife is by his side making her own major contract.
Absolutely great point. So this is the message. This is the strategy for Democrats: have millionaires tell working class people that they're struggling. And this is why, even when you look at Democrats, only 25% of Democrats strongly approve of Joe Biden's economy. 40% of Democrats don't like Joe Biden's economy, and that number is way worse. He's the worst president on the economy in the modern era, based on polls at this point. And there's shocking numbers, and this is why you're seeing a new era of Black leftists like RBN, like Black Power Media, and Black Agenda Report, and many others that are calling out the truth on the Biden administration and Bidenomics that's failing us, because there's a shocking number that you will never hear on Morning Joe, that ever since April, Black Americans make up 90% of the unemployment surge. So Bidenomics is for white bourgeoisie liberals. It's not for us and the workers. The Democratic Party is the party of Wall Street. They're the party of suburbia. And that's why it's even more shameful that people like Ilhan Omar and Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman is turning their back on the hood, even though Barack Obama and Joe Biden is responsible for the surge in racial income inequality. Despite being 13% of the homeless population, Black Americans make 40% of the homeless populations. And look at how blue states like California is handling that. We have my brother from Revolutionary Blackout, CJ. He volunteers at Skid Row every month feeding these people. I was feeding people, homeless people in Kansas City. And this is a problem that Democrats are horrible on because they are bought off by real estate developers and landlords. So when people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, despite this fact, keep calling these people the lesser evil, it shows that they are deeply unserious. And that's just scratching the surface of economics, Glenn. Scratching the surface.